development, so it assumes that new technologies are going to solve things, but also that local people aren't going to adopt these new technologies unless there's someone going out there and explaining the relevance of this and trialling it. People are still spending a lot of time with individual consultants, mentors as a way to learn, so that's the model of the bloke, and it usually was a bloke in the white youth going out giving advice, still occurs, but increasingly, as I said, there's this role of facilitation. But often the well-off farmers still have individual consultants and mentors coming out to help them. But there's also a growing pattern of what people call program learning. So if someone's put together a package of workshops or public lectures on how to deal with a particular issue and take it through a whole region. So the Murray-Darling Basin Commission has tried this in some circumstances as well. And finally, there's this new thing of group facilitation. So someone with facilitation skills going, working with farmers, getting them to define what the problem is, what the opportunities to address that are, and then assisting farmers to develop their solutions. And Andrew Campbell argues there's a really important need for a new thing which he calls knowledge brokering, something there in the middle that holds this all together. And it's a new idea that Land and Water Australia's put a lot of work into. And Andrew Campbell writes that knowledge brokering is typically used to refer to processes used by intermediaries in mediating between sources of knowledge, usually science and research, and uses of knowledge. Knowledge brokers help people ask the right questions and to identify the best source of information they need. So again, there's an increasing number of jobs that are advertised as knowledge brokers. You might know what a knowledge broker is, but hopefully you do now. And again, it's another opportunity in terms of working in natural resource management in Australia. As I said before, if you're working out there, one thing you're going to have to deal with is farmers with a very long model, very long memories. So often they'll say they're trying to deal with this problem, but the government created the problem. As I said before, government policies in the past are seen as being responsible, so landholders on these field trips always pointed out that the irony of the current government saying you should stop clearing vegetation. Government policies in Australia, as late as the 90s, were still encouraging that and giving incentives. So there's this whole range of perverse incentives that I mentioned before. And here's another quote from Judy Messer talking about fertiliser subsidies that encourage over-application, water pricing mechanisms that encourage overuse, various land use practices of extended farming well beyond the practical limits in Australia. We've also had policies that have artificially propped up pricing of goods, and also these drought relief measures, keeping people farming perhaps when they shouldn't. One thing that again I'd like you to think about in the tutorials is how do Landcare groups see the world, how do they define their boundaries? And this relates very well to the tutorial on regional planning. So there's Landcare groups are either based on local group senses of where the community stops and starts, or pre-existing organisations which the group has evolved from. And these two, of course, are related as a sense of community has already shaped existing organisations. And this sense of place can be very strongly shaped by the local geography. A strong sense of community can exist in some places like a small valley where everybody knows each other, where you all drive past each other every time you go to the school or the shops, and many successful Landcare groups form in those areas. The valley cannot be too big, or the sense of human connection can be lost. In many areas of Australia there aren't any boundaries in terms of natural boundaries. There aren't hills, it's just these vast plains. And in those areas often it's other factors apart from geography which determine social boundaries. The Murray Valley, the Riverina, or the rangelands in general, all too big for everyone in that area to know everybody else, and for people to feel that they're part of that community. And in such areas, cultural boundaries really strongly dominate people's sense of place. So rather than defining yourself as someone living in the Murrumbidgee catchment, people say often that their region is determined by the local football club. So every Saturday in Victoria, South Australia in particular, everyone will go to one town and play Aussie rules or netball. So there's a very strong sense of community. You're likely to marry somebody in that catchment area rather than somebody perhaps might be closer but in a different football netball league. So it's interesting that some Landcare groups have literally emerged out of football clubs or netball clubs or tennis clubs. And their origin also depends on how inclusive they are. Anna Carr, who some of you might have heard speak for first year class, did a PhD on this and looked at different Landcare groups which involved men and women, and some which didn't. The tennis club was the classic of equal gender basis, where some areas such as the fight, some areas where Landcare groups emerged from bushfire groups which were heavily male dominated were very different. So it's interesting to reflect on how the government is often divided up the country in terms of managing environmental policy, and increasingly there's a trend towards catchment approaches. Catchment approaches are all very well if you're managing rivers, but often, and nearly in all cases, Landcare groups don't see their boundaries the same way. They're seeing them culturally. Catchment management groups also often were appointed by the government, so you had the minister appointing somebody, and they didn't have the same legitimacy as the person who had been elected head of the Landcare group. And often there's been tensions in Australia between Landcare groups and catchment management groups for that reason. So we need to think about how inclusive Landcare is. It's been very effective including small landholders, and it's been more effective than most organisations, including women, but it's often excluded, and these groups have often been excluded from traditional rural bases. But as I said, the gender breakdown of groups varies very strongly between different areas depending on the origin of those Landcare groups. There's also a tension in a lot of Landcare groups between traditional large-scale farmers who see themselves as real farmers and the hobby farmers. So I don't know how many have lived in rural Australia, but there's a very strong sense that if you weren't born there, you're a blow-in. A blow-in is a derogatory term which relates to flies, to bush flies. So you're just blown in like a fly. You might have lived there 40 years or 50 years, but I've heard people who lived there for 40 or 50 years still be described as a blow-in. So they haven't proved their legitimacy yet when they weren't born there. Some of these blow-ins are people who have retired. They've got money around the Braidwood area. There's a lot of people doing really interesting, sustainable things because they've retired there. They've got money in many cases. They're former scientists who know about the capacity of the land and have been very instrumental in some very effective land groups in that area. But again, the real farmers would in some cases be derogative of the hobby farmers, saying, well, it's all very well for them to focus on Landcare. They're not happy to make a living off this land like I do. They've got their superannuation. As a result, some of the conservative farmers, as I said, will see Landcare as this greeny plot. A chair of one New South Wales Landcare group, for example, told one of my honours students how his group had formed because members thought we should make sure we got a say. The Greens were getting too much say on what was going on. So some really interesting reasons to motivate people joining those Landcare groups. Another aspect of how inclusive Landcare groups are is to look at the Indigenous involvement. So we have a tutorial coming up on Indigenous involvement. I mentioned earlier when I showed you the new policy document that developed by the government that they've tried to mainstream Indigenous concerns. So rather than have separate Indigenous funding organisations, they're saying Indigenous people should be involved in mainstream land management practices and funding organisations. I think that's a really good idea. In the past, there's been very limited role of Aboriginal people in Landcare, and this relates obviously to the marginal position that Aboriginal people play in most rural communities in Australia. But what has happened is that Aboriginal people who own land have formed their own land management organisations. So if you're interested in this area, there's some very impressive land management organisations, and I'll put this PowerPoint up as HTML also for you. So you want to explore some of these links that are there for you. And some of the most interesting jobs that former students have had in this class is go work with some of the Indigenous organisations, because what they're interested in doing is combining what they call two-way knowledge. They want their knowledge of the environment to be acknowledged and used in managing the environment. They're also desperate to understand Western science, because it helps them as well, because they're dealing with things such as feral animals, noxious plants, which weren't there before, and they're the first to acknowledge they need to take the best of Western science and Indigenous science and put it together to manage their country. Another criticism of Landcare relates to greenwash, so going back to the tutorials on the greening of business, and some of the issues that you examine in that tutorial, hopefully, that some businesses can use environmental credentials in a fairly flimsy way. Landcare was very good at getting a whole lot of celebrities involved. National Landcare Day has been promoted by high-profile TV programs. You can see a range of corporate sponsors there. number of